My name is Larissa. In this video, I will show you how to make the top part of the scrub cap I'm wearing. The scrub cap has a pouch for hair. I developed this model myself. You need to print out my sewing pattern, cut it out, then tape it. Now you're ready. To get your own copy of my sewing pattern, click on the link at the top of your video on the right. Now you're ready to start sewing. Always iron your fabric before you cut it. For the top part of your scrub cap, you need only one layer of fabric. Use ruler to make sure that your sewing pattern is aligned to the edge of the fabric. Your grid needs to be parallel to the edges of the ruler. Now trace all around the top part of your scrub cap pattern. I used pins to secure my sewing pattern to the fabric before I move it and add the pouch to the top part of the scrub cap. I trace all around both the sewing pattern for the top and the pouch. Now I am tracing around the guide for the elastic tape. I mark the wrong side of the fabric before I cut out the top side of my scrub cap. Use the sewing pattern to mark the line on the fabric where pouch connects with the top part and mark the wrong side of your guide. It's time to prepare the top part for sewing. First, we are going to iron down those spots where zigzag reinforcement will go and mark those lines where the pouch will connect with the top with a pin. We are going to do that on both sides. So just sprinkle a little bit, then iron it down, take a pin and mark it. To finish preparing the top part for sewing, I need to iron down seam allowance for the pouch. Next, we are going to use zigzag stitch to reinforce both sides of the top part of your scrub cap. After we reinforce both sides of the top part of the scrub cap with zigzag stitch, we are going to fold our pouch in two, right side inside, and secure those folds with pins. Now I need to make a seam closing one side of the pouch. I start with the corner and use straight stitch. I go all the way to the edge of the pouch. Then I stop, turn my work around, switch to zigzag stitch and finish reinforcing that seam. At the corner I make a knot and clean the seam, cutting off the thread and also the excess fabric all along the zigzag stitch. Next step is to prepare the guide for elastic tape. To do that, I am going to iron down all seam allowances all around that piece of fabric that is going to be my elastic tape guide. Next step, I iron down the seam I just made on my pouch. Then I flip the work on the wrong side, take my elastic tape guide, put it wrong side down, align it with the pin on one side of the top of the scrub cap, and then I secure the rest of it, aligning it with the edge of the pouch. I use zigzag stitch to connect the elastic tape guide to the top side of my scrub cap. I remove pins as I go all the way down to the other side. Once I reach the other end of the elastic tape guide, I am going to switch from zigzag stitch to the straight stitch. Right at this moment, I am going to stop my work, change the settings, and go straight stitch along the edge of the guide without stitching through it. Now I'm going to turn again, switch to zigzag, and finish stitching all the way to the other end, making sure that my needle, when it goes along the edge of the pouch, goes through the fabric, not through the air. Once I reach the end of the guide, I'm going to stop again, switch to the straight stitch, and finish stitching, making sure that the end is open. To finish this seam and make it nice and clean, I'm going to tie a knot, and I'm going to hide the ends of the thread between the layers of fabric using a needle. Before I can sew the other side of the pouch together, I need to pin together the ends of the elastic tape guide. I start stitching with straight stitch at the corner. Then I go all the way to the place where my elastic tape guide ends, making sure that I don't stitch through it. I flip my work around, switch to zigzag stitch, and stitch all the way back to the corner. Once I finish stitching, I tie a knot and make sure that I cut off the excess fabric all the way along the zigzag stitch. If you're using a serger doing your work, then you absolutely don't need to do this step. Both ends of your elastic tape guide should be open like this.